We're on the right path right now, believe me.
Mr. President, what about this with Secretary Tillerson and the IQ? What were you trying to get at, sir?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Secretary, do you worry that we're on the path to World War III?
Bob Parker, do you look at tax reform at all, sir?
I don't think so at all. I think we're well on our way. The people of this country want tax cuts. They want lower taxes. We're the highest taxed nation in the world. Our companies are not leaving so much now because we have them coming back. You see what happened. You see the announcements from companies building car plants now in Michigan. They're going to various different states. They're actually picking some additional locations. But just last week, 5 plants announced that they're going to build in this country. But I will say that we're the highest taxed nation in the world. People want to see massive tax cuts. I'm giving the largest tax cuts in the history of this country. In addition to that, there'll be reform. So I think that it's politically, it's very positive. The people of the country want it. We're also bringing back $3 trillion from offshore. That's money that's been there for years that wants to come back into the country, but the tax situation didn't allow it to happen, and the bureaucracy. And that's going to come back as part of the deal. $3 trillion. It could even be more than that. People want to see tax cuts, they want to see major reductions in their taxes, and they want to see tax reform, and that's what we're doing. And we'll be adjusting a little bit over the next few weeks to make it even stronger. But I will tell you that it's become very, very popular. And I'll also be signing something probably this week, which is going to go a long way to take care of many of the people that have been so badly hurt on health care. And they'll be able to buy, they'll be able to cross state lines, and they will get great competitive health care, and it will cost the United States nothing. Take care of a big percentage of the people we're talking about, too. So with Congress the way it is, I decided to take it upon myself. So we'll be announcing that soon as far as the signing is concerned. But it's largely worked out it's very simple in one way, but very intricate in another. But it will be great health care for many, many people. A big percentage of the number of people that we were talking about for failed Obamacare. Now, we're going to have to do something with Obamacare because it's failing. Henry Kissinger does not want to pay 116% increase in his premiums, but that's what's happening. And it's actually getting worse. It's getting worse by the minute. So we're going to have to do something with Obamacare, and that will work out. But very importantly, a big percentage of people will be able to get health care, and they'll be able to go across state lines. They'll be able to buy from many, many competitors, and meaning the insurance companies. And it will not cost our country anything, but they'll have great health insurance again.
Did you undercut the Secretary of State today with the IQ comment?
No, I didn't undercut anybody. I don't believe in undercutting people. Thank you very much, everybody.
You still have confidence in Secretary Tillerson, sir?
Yes. Thank you.
Ma'am, please, out the door.
And there, just moments ago, the president talking briefly with some reporters in the White House. It was during a meeting with former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. You could see reporters there at the end trying to ask the president whether he still has confidence in his own Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson. The president said that he did not mean to undercut the Secretary of State with recent comments about Tillerson. There's been a lot of rumors about ongoing tensions between the two men. The president also taking a lot of time to talk about upcoming health care legislation and proposals that he's planning to announce. Not a lot of specifics, but he clearly still thinking about ways to move on health care. I'm Mary Alice Parks in ABC's Washington Bureau, and I want to bring in my colleague, Catherine Falders, who's there at the White House. Catherine, you know, the president is supposed to have lunch today with Secretary of State Tillerson and the Secretary of Defense, James Mattis. I mean, these two men clearly talking around each other in the press. Is this going to be a rather awkward lunch?
You know, I could imagine that it's going to be a rather awkward lunch. Now, press, we're not allowed into that meeting. There's not going to be a pool spray, as you just saw with the president before. perhaps maybe for that little awkwardness that may happen there. But with those IQ comments, it's pretty fascinating. I mean, we think back to and we've talked about this, the moron comments that had been reported that Secretary Tillerson reportedly called the president a moron. The president has dismissed that, obviously, as fake news. But what's fascinating about this IQ comment this morning is he says, I think it's fake news. But if he did that, he's leaving some room open for that, saying, I guess we'll have to compare IQ tests there. Now, he's almost asked pretty much regularly at this point. As you mentioned, we've reported that there has been tensions between Tillerson and the president. And he's almost asked regularly at this point if he still has confidence in him. Today he said yes. But Mary Alice, I think you're right about that lunch that they're going to be having today. It's going to be fascinating to see what comes out of that and if they are still on the same page.
And one more feud that has been significantly more public. Really now at the level of absolute name-calling, the president and the very senior Republican Senator Bob Corker. People were reporters were asking the president about some of Corker's recent comments, too. Corker is the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And so this week when he said that he was worried the president was leading the country toward World War III, it really set off alarm bells here in Washington and around the world, because we're talking about a senator who would be sort of in the know, who's talking to diplomats every single day in his position there in the Senate. You heard the president there pushing back against Corker's comments, saying that he does not believe that obviously he's leading the country into World War III, saying he thought that the country was on the wrong path now. But I was struck this morning. The president, again taking to Twitter, again striking back against Corker. He has a new nickname for the senator.
He does, and that new nickname is Little Bob Corker. There's somebody else who he calls Little, as we know, is Marco Rubio. This is now number 2 with that nickname. Liddle is how he spelled that one. So
how do you pronounce that, Catherine? Little?
Little. I'm going with Little. Little Marco, Little Bob Corker. We have the whole thing over here, Mary Alice. But when he tweeted this morning, I'm fascinated by this tweet. When he said, he referred to the New York Times as a failing New York Times. He said they set Bob Corker up by recording his conversation. And I don't know about you, but I'm not quite sure what the president has to gain from this tweet here, because Corker, as we know, has been publicly coming out against the president. He knew the conversation was on the record. We know that the New York Times reporter said that one of Corker's aides was recording the phone call, was recording the interview. So the president is essentially implying that, if Corker knew that this was on the record, which we know he did, then he, would have been more honest, right? So another very public feud here in the White House. And, we're not getting any indication from folks over here that the president's going to let up on this. And in fact, he probably still wants to fuel the conversation. And Mary Alice, something you can speak to a little bit here is that Corker is a significant vote, especially on tax reform. The president was asked in that spray if he thinks that this ongoing feud with Corker would affect tax reform. And he said, I don't think so. But what do you make of that?
I frankly think the president might be wrong here. We're talking about a very senior Republican senator who has said in the past that he is absolutely unwilling to vote for any tax package that could increase the federal deficit. This is someone that people on Capitol Hill really respect, who's very careful with his words. So when he took to Twitter, basically calling the president a child over the weekend, all of these comments about the fact that he believes that people close to the president are keeping the country from devolving into absolute chaos. He really struck a nerve with folks in Washington, and it's been interesting to watch how many of his colleagues haven't disagreed. It wasn't like Republicans came out and started dismissing Senator Corker, or saying, we don't listen to him very much. They've been very quiet, and if anything, they've put out statements saying that he's a friend and he's a trusted colleague. So we are just seeing more and more absolute division between this president and members of his own party, very senior members of his own party on Capitol Hill. And the idea that would not in some way get in the way of passing big legislative items, passing tax reform, that's just absurd. It is very, very hard to do these big ticket projects without everyone working together. And I'm trying to think of what else is coming up today. I mean, it's a busy day for you guys there at the White House. The Penguins are also going to be at the White House. And that's another big political topic that this president has been weighing into, you know, time and time again. And again this morning, tweeting about the NFL, saying that maybe they should look at how the NFL gets tax breaks because of this controversy with players not standing for the national anthem. You know, I was struck over this morning how many people online were surprised the president was tweeting on that topic, sports again, athletes again, but not, for instance, tweeting on deadly wildfires in California, not, for instance, tweeting on North Korea. What's the topic? What's the mood there at the White House about a big sports team coming? Are people expecting that the president's going to use this as another opportunity to talk about athletes and athletes' respect or disrespect for the flag?
Yeah, you know, I think he hasn't made the Penguins visit political quite yet today. He has been tweeting about the NFL earlier today and tax breaks. And frankly, the mood inside the White House, Mary Alice, is that, you know, his aides want him to continue talking about the NFL and the flag and the national anthem. You've seen he hasn't let up on that really in all of 2 weeks. So you take this Penguins visit, for example. You think about when the Patriots also visited a few months back, and players didn't come to that as well. There was no mention of that in his public remarks. I would, you know, tend to believe that he would try not to make this event political, but I don't know. I think it's hard to imagine. I think he'll still, he could possibly, that's the question, wade into the NFL debate, mention it when the Penguins are here later today. So I think it's to be determined, but I think it does open up that chance for him to weigh in on something he frankly doesn't want to stop talking about.
Absolutely. So all of these conversations, these questions about his relationship with Senate Republicans, his relationship with his own cabinet, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, where the president sees this conversation going with sports and the NFL. I'm sure all of those topics will come up today during the White House briefing in just a few hours. And I think again at that event, perhaps again at that event with the president and the Penguins later this afternoon. We'll be taking all of that live here on ABC News. Be sure to watch it. We'll be breaking down the White House briefing like we do every time with the briefing room. Be sure to watch. I'm Mary Alice Parks, joined by my colleague Catherine Faulders there at the White House. Thanks so much.